Yo, it's your boy Logos here from the podcast, and this is a new series I'm going to be kicking off where I'll be covering certain topics or stuff that piques my interest that maybe cause me to rant or not rant, depending on what the topic is, in the effort to bring out more content during the week, in between the time that me and Ram can meet up on the weekends to collaborate and come out with longer videos on topics like we did previously. So I do have like some like interests and like knowledge in areas of like history, politics, video game stuff. I'm fine with talking about video game stuff and more laid back stuff like that. But also talk about like serious stuff like real life stuff, stuff within the community, stuff within the world at large, and just stuff that pique my interest that I already think about, talk about every now and then, or pretty often, to be honest, with Ram in real life outside of the podcast and also within our circle of friends and within my circle of friends and those close around me. So this series is nothing more than just taking some of those conversations I already be thinking about and just putting those on YouTube in the effort to make more content for you guys. That way we can get this channel up and running and be more consistent with the content we put out. We did change the name from the Black Privilege Podcast to Call Out the Chaos. I really did love the original name, the Black Privilege Podcast. I thought of it like a few years ago when I first talked to Ram about doing the podcast together. That the whole deal of the podcast was inspired by Joe Rogan and watching his podcast and also listening to his conversations with Jordan Peterson because his conversation with Jordan Peterson was conversations that led to me having those with Ram, and I was like, man, fuck it, we can do this shit online and put these ideas out because from our perspective, we didn't see that many people talking about the stuff we're talking about, at least within the black community. There are some guys like Officer Tatum who we're fans of, and some other people. We used to really love Kevin Samuels until he passed away, unfortunately. But we used to watch these guys, and plus Joe Rogan, they kind of inspired us to do this podcast. So we're still going to continue to make this like a constant thing. But there's little sub series during the week, just a way to put out more content, and a solo way for just me logos to rant and stuff without me and Ram going back and forth and stuff like that. So today, what I want to talk about is kind of related to the offset and I'm sorry, not offset, takeoffs um situation, his passing, and how like so many of young black men in particular are dying over just unnecessary nonsense within our community. And in my opinion, it doesn't get talked about enough unless it happens to somebody famous like Takeoff, unfortunately. But even then, the outrage or whatever only lasts for like a week at the most, and then it's back to business as usual. Like in my opinion, I prefer if we would have the same amount of energy that we do towards racism and police brutality and all the other stuff that we've seen the marches about for the past 5, 7, 10 years or so, and also have that same energy for our inner city situation, which, in my opinion, seems like a much more crucial situation to deal with compared to the other things that we tend to focus our mind upon. And I say that because if you have young black men dying all the time within their own city, and we have young black men celebrating the fact that we're living to the age 25, 26, because there's a statistic saying that it's unlikely that a young black man will live that long. I think that we should look within ourselves to see what we can improve within our communities to make sure that doesn't happen. Because unless somebody can pull up some data that I'm not familiar with or that I'm unaware of, it's not like KKK members driving down the streets of inner cities and spraying indiscriminately young black men. That I kind of described the drive-by, and these drive-bys that really do happen are usually like gang violences, black men on black men, and it's usually over like drugs, money, power, control over certain areas to further facilitate that drugs and money and power. But it seems so artificial and wasteful when that property that they're dying over, they don't own it. They just control it because the police doesn't move in there and do anything. And so yeah, so I feel like police presence should be more further maintained in these type of neighborhoods. And I do believe that, of course, when you have a further police presence, you could open up more opportunities for bad apples within the police force to unfortunately over exercise their power. But in my opinion, I don't believe that most of the police force is corrupt. If that was the case, we would see corruption and killing and murder much more pervasive with a lot less consequences behind it. And I do believe that more consequences should be um, brought out to officers when they do mess up. I think that could just be fixed with more training and more rigorous discipline. Of course, I'm not a police officer, so I'm just talking what I think should work. I'm just trying to think of possible solutions because I know police officers have a very tough job and they have a very, very dangerous job that could cost them their life at any moment. It could be a traffic stop, it could be stopping a robbery, it could be showing up to a domestic violence incident. It could be a number of things that lead to the injury or death of police officers. So I'm not minimizing their risk and the costs of their job, making sure that people, everyday civilians that aren't police officers, aren't the victim of lack of lack of control, hormones going so fast, adrenaline. Like I understand that type of stuff can make people mess up, but when the price is so high, I think training is the best way to go about reducing the chances of that happening. When you look at the military and how much they train over and over and over again, but they see much less combat or potentially, well, instead of saying combat, let's say high stress situations, because not every police encounter leads to combat, but a lot of police encounters do lead to high stress situations, which then could lead to combat. The reason I bring that up is because the army and other armed forces they train so rigorously, so they can have trigger control, so they can know what to do when something arises that was unplanned. And I feel like if that was to carry over to the police, that could make their job easier and also make the lives of the people they're supposed to be protecting much easier too, and they could feel much safer. And we will have less occurrences of police brutality and less occurrences of things where people have like a mental health episode and they send out police officers and that escalates to like a murder or something like that. I just don't believe that saying defund the police or all police are bad or anything of the such is the right way to fix things within our community. In my opinion, it goes back to look within ourselves to see what we can enforce and do and what we can elevate as standards and virtues and morals to live up to so we can have less people die over land and bullshit they don't own. So less kids can die at the age of 14 and 15 due to gun violence and thinking that this experience that they have at the age of 15 is the peak of their life and that's what life is living for. They haven't even reached maybe 10, well, not 10%, but maybe like a quarter of what their life could be if they didn't die that young. They could live to like 70, 80 years old, but end up dying at 16, 17, 18 behind the gun of somebody else because they was arguing over stupid shit like drugs and violence and stuff like that. But even outside of gangs and stuff like that, you have young black men dying from what you would think would be minor insignificant things like let's say like two guys are at a nightclub and one guy goes with his girlfriend and they're walking in the club together but a dumbass decides to slap his girl in the ass. Of course he's gonna defend his girl and say something about it, then that nigga, the ignorant nigga that slapped her ass. But then that dumb shit could escalate and one of them could have a gun or both of them could have a gun and they start shooting that shit up and both of them could die. Or even if none of them die, nobody dies. Well, probably like that's the thing too. Like civilians and people that are not involved in the fight, similar to the takeoff situation, could die in the crossfire on accident. But even if the two men involved don't die, they probably gonna go to jail anyway for releasing the firearm in a public place. And that's just that if those weapons are like actually signed to their name and they got those legally. Because depending on the state, you can't have guns. But of course, people gonna defend themselves regardless in their own home or out and about in the streets. especially if they know they may be involved with some people who live a lifestyle that is more dangerous than a typical civilian does. But stupid situations like a guy slapping his girlfriend in the ass in the club can escalate to a full blown fist fight, which could escalate to a full blown gunfight, like we saw with Takeoff. I just think it's an issue in our community that we focus on stuff like racism, but we don't focus on how we kill each other. It seems like we more easily able to brush off how much we kill each other compared to when somebody else does it. I think it's both equally fucked up, especially when it's over dumbass reasons. Unless you're defending yourself, it's really hard for me to say like that's a good killing. And especially if you're killing each other over stupid shit like I said over and over again, like drugs and years of like rivalries and hatred over neighborhoods that you don't even own, neighborhoods that don't even have houses on them, homes on that you can't even pass down to your children. Sometimes these children that they be having children at like 16, they can't even pass it down to them before they die because they don't own it. They don't even own the damn apartment room they stay at. It could be a trap house. It could be their mama's place that they just be in and out of and shit in between game banging or seeing their girlfriends or whatever. Like they're dying over stuff that doesn't have any value because as soon as they die, it's just gonna be the next nigga up, the next young dude up, and depending on who else they could force in that lifestyle, who's nearby, who has no tutelage or has no safe haven or has no mother or no father who could keep them away from that bullshit, who could tell them that stuff is stupid. They're just gonna fall back into it, and then they're gonna be the next man on the front line to get killed in a drive-by or at a corner store, or who knows, like even at the fucking friend's funeral who was a gay member too. You know, sometimes in these communities they want to get you whenever they can get you, so they don't give a fuck if you were like at a barbecue for your fucking nephew cousin who's like 4 years old who has nothing to deal with the shit that's going on, or if you're at the funeral of the homeboy that they killed in the first place, they're gonna try to get you where they can get you. And you think I'm bullshitting, you can go on YouTube, especially I know Officer Tatum for a fact, he had a video that me and Ram looked at last year, where a guy, and I think Chicago, they did like a drive-by like in a public neighborhood. I don't know why I said public neighborhood, of course it's like a public neighborhood. I mean, a neighborhood is public, but the neighborhood was just wide open. People was walking by like it's a normal damn day, which it was. And these niggas like pulled up on the sidewalk and started shooting across the street from each other. And you could see like civilians, innocent people running in the background trying not to get hit. And that shit just stupid. You turn in where you live into a war zone. I don't see the glamour or the honor or the glory in dying at the age of 17 over some fast money that's won't equal shit. How much you make in your whole life? Like what I said earlier, dying at age 16 when you could live to 75, and at 16 you get into this lifestyle because you want to make this fast money, impress people, and impress girls around you because you can make what 1,000, 2,000, 12,000. Let's go up. Let's just say 25,000 a week selling drugs at the high end. Like, but you could make 25,000 in 6 months with a skill, and you could be making six figures by the time you're 30 if you play your cards right and go about it the right way. Like, what does a 60,000? Fuck it, I'll go even higher. What does a $200,000 that you'll make from age 13 to 17 game banging and selling drugs and shit? So I'll say $50,000 a year. That's probably I'll go even higher. What is the $400,000 that you're gonna make over those 4 or 5 years game banging from 13 to 17? What is that in comparison to living from 18 to 70? And once you hit 30, you can make about six figures if you're like in a STEM job or in cybersecurity or IT or something like that. Like that's what I'm saying. Like from 30 to 75, if you just stop at 100,000, don't go even higher. Don't add any more experience or add any more certificates. None of that shit at all. Just stop at 100K. That's the most you can make. You'll already be making $1 million in earnings before taxes by the time you're 40. That $1 million completely dwarfs that 400,000 that I gave you from age 13 and 17. And I really feel like I'm overballing saying 400,000 because I really believe there's no fucking way you're gonna have $400,000 just hidden under your damn couch or your bed. Because if you put that much in the bank, IRS gonna check your shit and they're gonna send the FBI. I know your ass ain't gonna go in the shootout with the FBI. If you are, you're gonna lose and you're gonna die for even more of a stupid reason. So like, but fuck it, I'll still give you the 400 damn thousand. That 400 damn thousand is still half of what you would have made from 30 to 40, or even 30 to 45 if you want to include taxes too. Is it really worth that 400,000 over 4 years so you can get some girls that you can fuck and then worry about getting them pregnant and then them asking about money for the rest of your life? Is it really worth getting into a lifestyle where you have to look over your shoulder every single time you step out in public? Is it really worth having a life that you'll probably die by the time you're 22? Like, it's when you really break it down, it's not worth it, and that's why I feel like we need to talk more about what's happening within our community and the illogical stuff and the violent illogical stuff that goes on in our community, because I feel like that's having more of an impact than racism it has now. This isn't the 1930s or 1940s where you can't get on the bus unless you sat in the back, or you couldn't drink from a particular water fountain, or you couldn't go to a particular college. Like, it is not like that at all. Now you can get financial aid because of your being a minority. You can get financial aid, or you can even maybe have your application looked at ahead of other people simply because of the fact that you're a minority and you have good grades. So, in my opinion, this focus on racism is a waste of time. It's a waste of time because we could be much more productive and see much more results when we focus on ourselves and be accountable for ourselves as a community and as an individual and see results that we actually want compared to saying racism this or racism that and blaming others for where we are now. Because we've been, how long has it been since civil rights and Jim Crow? And I'm not saying that racism ended overnight as soon as they signed the dotted line on the fucking bill. I'm just saying that stuff is much better than it was 60 fucking years ago. I'm not going to partake in no bullshit where I'm acting like it's the same as back when MLK was marching and getting hose on and getting bent up by fucking dogs. If you wanted to make his sacrifice and his pain and the suffering that he went through and his death and the death of Malcolm, worth it all, and the jailing of Muhammad Ali and all these other people that we love to talk and rave about once a fucking month for 28 fucking days every single year, same people. If you want to at least make the sacrifices worth it, not just lip talk, they could at least look at ourselves now that we have the stuff that they fought to achieve. Because at this point, there's nothing more to look at besides ourselves. And that doesn't mean you don't criticize bullshit coming at you from the world, or they don't criticize the government when they say some bullshit or do some bullshit. I'm all for that, and trust me, we're gonna do that a lot more throughout the series and on the channel with just me and Raymond alongside me. But as a community, if we want to be successful, if we want to build generational wealth, if we want to see our children, our grandchildren, our great great grandchildren have the generational success that we love to talk about and post on social media or Instagram and all these other fucking stories to get likes and other bullshit, then we need to be critical of ourselves. And being critical of ourselves don't mean you're saying you're a piece of shit, or we're pieces of shit, or we're worth nothing, or we're less than what we should be. Well, that we're lesser than white people or any other people. It just means that we know we have potential, we can go better, we can do better. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think there's more of an issue with being stable, being static, and not progressing, and not advancing, not improving. And the only way you really can improve is to self-analyze, to see what's fucking up within yourself. If you don't like the word fucking up, I just saying fucking up, because that's how I talk. Analyzing what's within yourself and what's going on, and then working through that to make yourself better day by day. The same way with how racism didn't change overnight, I'm not expecting our community to change overnight either. I'm just hoping that we take the right steps within ourselves by criticizing ourselves first to get where we need to be. Because only by being critical is the only way you can really improve. I feel like anybody has been successful has that mindset. I don't know, that's at least what I've noticed and studied from the people that I like to watch and be inspired by. like David Goggins, like a Kevin Samuels, like a Nate the Lawyer, like a Officer Tatum, like a Jocko Willenick, like some special forces guys that I watch, like Joe Rogan, like Jordan Peterson, um, like all these other great men that has achieved the greatness that they have achieved through looking at themselves in the mirror and seeing themselves as a specimen, a body, a person who can be improved upon every single damn day to the day they die. And I feel like, in my opinion, that's a good mindset to have because it keeps you on your goal, it keeps you on your path, and keeps you focused. And once you lose focus, that's when you can let the bullshit get in. That's when you can have people convince you of shit that you know doesn't really make sense, but it makes you feel good, or it provides that temporary comfort that you need and provides that little softness when you know sometimes you need to be more harder on yourself to get that greatness out of yourself that you need, while also at the same time not putting yourself through mental strain where you think yourself as a bad person or somebody that is less than. And that's what I just want for us as a community to recognize how great we could be and how great we used to be when we really had racism and bullshit to deal with, and now take the steps to actually do that shit. Because being accountable is the only really path I see to greatness. We can complain about the same bullshit decade after decade, but that's not gonna cause shit to change. We have to make shit change ourselves by changing and improving ourselves and having these standards and living up to these standards. And even if somebody or ourselves fall below them in a particular area or topic or an event or just a situation or context one time, that doesn't mean they're a bad person. That just means they didn't reach it that time. And we need to lift them up to do it again. But don't also at the same time excuse it and say like it was good enough. You get what I mean? I'm not saying like if you fail you're not good enough. I'm just saying if you fail, you have to try harder to get to that bar that you're reaching for. Because that feeling you get in your pit of your stomach when you fail isn't because you're not good enough. It's because you had a goal and you didn't reach it yet. But that just means you have to keep trying to reach it. And I don't know, that's just how I feel about our community. If we have some standards, we should maintain them. And if somebody doesn't reach it, we don't lower the bar. We keep the bar the same, and we keep trying to reach for it. Yeah, that's all I gotta say this time. Alright, I'm signing out. It's your boy Logos. I'll see you next time.